What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Screen Speak, the podcast that's all about movies, life, and so much more. I'm Jordan Anderson, this is my podcast, and as per usual, I thank each of you for taking the time to come by and give this a listen. I really think you're going to like what I have in store for you all today and the days to follow because it's something different, something new, something that I've been actually cooking up for some time, just getting my head wrapped around it and prepared to release to you all. In short, this episode is introducing a new segment to you all for the podcast that I've dubbed Screen Think. Might not seem like a big reach name-wise, right? Screen Speak, Screen Think. Whoa, you replaced a whole word with another word. That's so original and different. But here's the thing with this. As I came up with this idea, took the time to flesh it out, and created the pilot for it, which is what you're about to listen to, I then came to the naming of this actual segment. And in thinking about the name, I had to really think and decide what this segment's goal and what it should be all about. So I want to explain how I got to this point first before we dive into this, because I think by doing so, it's going to explain how I landed on this name, and the real important question to answer is why I'm bothering on making a new segment for the podcast at all. I started Screen Speak on August 13th, 2021 with a very simple idea and format in mind. Take an individual movie, pick apart its themes, messages, ideas, and real-world implications all through my own honest perspective and lens and see if it sticks. That simple. I started doing it solo and eventually tried my hand at interviewing, quote-unquote, friends and family, which I actually prefer saying conversation, having conversations with them, rather than just straight-up interviewing, because you're having a dialogue over a solitary back and forth, which is honestly what attracted me to the medium of podcasting in the first place. But I digress. Here and there, I would occasionally play around with something off format or original. Such examples would include my movie collection, parts 1 through 5. I did a tribute to Ray Liotta when he passed away. And that was all well and good, but I was still mostly sticking with my originally set format while getting a more steady stream of guests to pop in there for it. It was around the 1 year mark that I began making new strides in the broadening the guests that I had on the podcast beyond people that I just knew personally. This began by approaching a local Cedar Rapids, Iowa street character known to the locals here as Hockey Man. Now, I'll be honest, everybody. I didn't think that guy was going to be a wealth of movie knowledge or insight, and I think if you listen to the episode, you would probably say the same on it, right? But I did know by taking a chance and doing something quite literally outside of the box, it would help get some local eyes and ears on what I was doing. I was definitely taking a chance on that one, but getting through it and surviving it, it taught me a valuable lesson. It taught me that I do have skills at this beyond just talking with family and friends. It wasn't long after that I had my first local business sponsorship and guest on the podcast, being my own barber, Mr. Isaac McGee. And a quick shout out to Isaac and the folks over at Barber's Edge and Hair Salon in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You're looking for a haircut, you're looking for beard work, they do great work and can handle both of those. Don't have a beard, it doesn't matter. Get your hair cut. They do an awesome job. They're local and they will treat you, well, they'll treat you like family basically. Like they're just great people over there. So shout out to them. They didn't pay for that. They didn't pay for that segment at all. I really like what they're doing and I just felt the need to shout them out. So that's what I'm doing. But let me keep going here. By this point, I began taking more time to research and prep episodes, and in particular, I think that actually starts to show when you listen to episode 58 of the podcast, being the special I did on Heat 1 and the book Heat 2. This would translate as well into more quote-unquote think piece style episodes like episode 62, Controversial Movie Opinions, and episode 66, Streaming, Latest Watched, Enjoyed, Forgotten About, and Anticipated. By the time year 3 rolled around, which is where we're at right now, I began having really strong feelings within myself that told me I was still thinking small with this thing. Still treating this podcast as more of a hobby and not quite as a passion or something to build on, nurture, and grow. I really found that 2023 has become the year that I took an aggressive, forward-thinking stand on my podcast and essentially decided with it, it's time to shit or get off the pot. There's probably better analogies I could come up with that, but that really is the first thing that came to mind, and I'm not even sure if that applies with what I'm trying to say here, but hopefully if you've been listening this long, you get what I'm trying to say. I gradually began having ScreenSpeak get tapped into the local film community here within the state of Iowa, starting with Collins Road Theater's owner and operator Bruce Taylor. Getting the chance to interview him felt like the most professional thing that I had done at the time, and it really did give me the needed confidence in order to continue to push myself and this podcast on the greater heights. From that moment on, it has thus far turned ScreenSpeak into having its most successful year to date. Since deciding to explore my state's own film community deeper, I've discovered much talent and creativity happening right around me that I was completely oblivious to before. It introduced me to the Cedar Rapids Independent Film Festival, Iowa Independent Film Festival, Refocus Film Festival, and countless others that I'm looking forward to bringing the podcast to in 2024 and beyond. Along with that has also come great new relationships that have formed, namely with the folks over at Mediaverse Studios in Marengo, Iowa. Shout out Mediaverse. And of course, the now dozens of guests that I've had the pleasure of having thoughtful conversations with, what they're working on, further promoting their art and craft to the world around them at large. It's a year that I'm forever grateful to have had, but I still feel there is so much left to go. Which leads us to today. Where do I take ScreenSpeak from here? Do I continue to evolve and grow the show's presence in the state of Iowa and beyond by visiting film festivals, putting a spotlight on up-and-coming filmmakers from all walks of life, while still maintaining the essence of what my show started as, which is me letting my personality and commentary fly while I tell you all what movies mean and how they speak so loudly to me? Is that what I do? You bet. That's exactly what I'm going to do and continue to do. But at the same time, I want to ensure that I'm growing, challenging myself, doing what I can to reach that all too sought after state of contentment known as fulfillment, or in my case, creative fulfillment. So all that said, I decided to really take some time to explore some ideas that I had kicking around upstairs and turn at least one of them for the time being into reality. And with that, I can introduce you all to ScreenThink. ScreenThink is a segment of ScreenSpeak, and it's designed to deliver you essay-style, thought-provoking content on complex subjects within the vast world of movies, art, and entertainment that seem to lack clear-cut answers. Each episode is broken out into chapters, blending the style of podcasts, audiobooks, and TED Talks all into one. My goal each time that I release a new ScreenThink to you all is to get you thinking, get you reflecting, and challenging your understanding of aspects of the world of movies that you may very well have never had the time to think about before, or at least never had the time to think about it in depth before. In this first of the segment, I talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart: physical media. The title of this segment I've called Preserving Permanence. It consists of 9 chapters that will be released over the course of the coming 5 days, chapter 1 being today. I get into the history of physical media, its importance to the film industry, and where I think the format should and can go from here. I sincerely hope that you all like this new direction on the podcast, but to be clear, all content going forward is not going to be strictly ScreenThinks. As I found with this one, it takes a lot more time to put something like this together than a typical episode does for me. Meaning, if I release one of these, it's really important to me, and it means that I have something I feel compelled to say that I want to have some weight on. While you wait for more content, enjoy these upcoming chapters of my new segment ScreenThink. And let me know what you think about it, and of course, hit the follow button or rate the show so that you don't miss out while simultaneously showing your support for this show. I really love each of you out there, love all my listeners, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. To be clear, I do think I'm going to have some content up possibly before Christmas, but at this point, I really can't make any promises on that because it's just a crazy time of year. Anyways, enjoy the coming chapters, and thank you again so much for listening. Chapter 1. Physical Media Throughout Time. You can't get into depth talking about physical media without going back to where it all started, back at the beginning. This chapter is going to serve as a bit of a history lesson, if you will, on physical media itself. Because by understanding its history, you can better understand how we got to where we're at right now, and more importantly, where the format can and should go from here. So physical media has taken a lot of shapes and forms over the years. It's come in the form of actual film, being your 16mm, 8mm, and 35mm film, laser discs, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K Ultra HD discs. Now for decades, filmmakers have relied upon and used these forms of physical media as a primary means of distributing their films to an even larger audience than what was originally allowed for through their film's original theatrical distribution run. These formats also served as another means for the filmmakers and their teams to be able to earn profit from the hard work that they all put into the films. Some films through physical media have even gained what you would call a second life, or performed even better once they're made available physically rather than theatrically. Blade Runner, Boondock Saints, and several other movies I can name off the top are things that come to mind when I think about this. Because of its tangible form, some filmmakers' work has been able to spread far and wide and been found by people when it's really least expected. Maybe it's when you're walking up and down the aisle of your favorite used bookstore, while you're browsing inside of a pawn shop, or maybe it's while you're searching for a video game or something else entirely, nothing to do with movies, and you find it completely by mistake. Or maybe it's simply when you're viewing the back and front of a film's physical format while you're wandering the aisles of a video rental store in search of something new and different to watch that night. It's also been used as a way to archive and preserve filmmakers' cast and crew's hard work and efforts, allowing their projects to be appreciated in tangible form in the present and long in the future generations. Now let's go back to the true beginning of all this and talk about 16mm film. So your 16mm film originally got introduced by the Eastman Kodak Company, or Kodak for short, all the way back in 1923. Its original purpose was to be used by amateur filmmakers or people that wanted to record and preserve their friends and family on somewhat of a viewable archive from within their own home. Eventually, over time, 16mm film would find its way into commercial application, including educational films for schools, newsreels, and even some theatrical releases that were out there. 16mm film consists of a strip of film that's 16mm wide, with perforations on one side for sprocket engagement. The film itself would be able to be loaded onto reels and played using 16mm projectors, and this would allow the average person a more compact and more affordable alternative to the larger film formats of the time, which in turn made its accessibility reach a broad range of applications across our society. Now, in these early days of physical media, it really did play a vital role for home entertainment and distribution for films outside of the theater. I can't really stress that part enough. Over time, film technology would continue to advance, introducing other formats of film like 8mm and 35mm film, which would only really help further enhance and improve the longevity of films that were released over the coming years. Now we fast forward to 1978, we do get introduced briefly to Laserdiscs. You might remember this format, Laserdiscs, or LDs for short, as a significant advancement in the world of film and home entertainment, at least back in the late 1970s. So these were the first type of optical disc technology that were used to house films in a more secure and stable way than what your traditional 16mm film or other home film formats that preceded it were able to support. They were 12 inches or 30 centimeters long in diameter and resembled essentially a giant, big-looking CD. Looked more like a vinyl disc than something that you'd actually be able to watch a movie off of. They were capable of holding footage on both sides of the disc, and depending on the length of the movie, it really wouldn't be considered uncommon to have to flip one over in the middle of the film because one side was not capable of holding the entire picture. Eventually, VHS would run into this problem too, along with a handful of DVDs and Blu-rays that would come down the line later. Laserdiscs, though, for a time were really great to have, but as home entertainment technology continued its advancements, they eventually became too costly to produce, and in certain cases, just plain too big. They're too large to store in mass quantities for the average collector. A few years prior, 1976 to be exact, there was another physical media format that was introduced. One that for many years continued to be used and far outlived Laserdisc, introduced just 2 short years ahead of it. This format was Video Home System, commonly known by the masses as VHS or VHS tapes. So this format used half-inch magnetic tape that was housed within a large cassette. It would allow for longer recording times, outpacing and eventually beating its main competitor at the time that was trying to do a similar thing, known as Betamax. So your typical VHS tape could hold up to 2 hours of a movie. And eventually blank VHS tapes were also produced, which would allow people to record entire movies that were broadcasted by television or possibly even record some of their favorite TV shows that were playing. So by the 1980s, VHS began picking up real steam and became the dominant format for home video consumption by the mass of the entertainment marketplace. Because of this format's staying power of the time, It allowed for the first time libraries of content to be available, thus creating the beginning of the home video boom over the years, or film collecting as a hobby and a passion. VHS's dominance of the physical media market would last throughout the 80s and even into most of the 90s as well. It was only around the year 2000 that the format's decline started to become apparent because of the next level of physical media technology that was on the way, DVD. So DVD stands for Digital Versatile Discs. They originally got introduced to the world sometime in the mid-1990s, all the way over in Japan, eventually making their way across the world and becoming the dominant physical media format of the time. They utilized a 120mm or 4.7 inches optical disc and would use MPEG-2 compression for its video, providing a major improvement of video and audio quality compared to its predecessors. They also introduced us to all the interactive features on a disc that we probably now consider to be common, such as your menus, scene selections, and a major important piece when it comes to talking about physical media, bonus content, sometimes known as bonus features. DVDs were a lot more durable than VHS tapes, which over time and with repeated use could get worn down and in some cases be made unplayable, which just sucked. By the early 2000s, DVD was the dominant format for home video consumption of film and entertainment. DVDs, just like VHS before it, remained a stable and reliable format for film lovers and collectors alike, adding to people's home archives of films and allowing films to last even longer than before and reach even more people than ever thought possible before. And for the decades to come, the optical disc, as far as the format goes, would remain dominant and advancing with technological improvements as time continued on. Eventually, we arrive in 2006, which most of us in the film community will know as being the birth of Blu-ray. Blu-ray was the next logical step in evolution for the optical disc as a format. It had higher storage capacity than DVD and provided improved video and audio over DVD. Now, like DVD, Blu-ray would also utilize a 120mm optical disc. On this disc, though, there was significantly more storage space, which allowed arguably the most important upgrade of all, high-definition video or 1080p quality, along with enhanced, advanced audio quality. Around this time, there was a very brief stint of a competing format known as HD DVD. You may remember seeing their dark red cases around, looking awfully similar in feel to that of Blu-ray discs. Their similarity and availability at the same time of Blu-ray caused a lot of consumers to be confused and unsure of which format was superior and worth owning. Some studios were for the format, but most over time chose to stick and opt with Blu-ray instead. Most known explanations for the failing of HD DVD had to do with licensing issues, royalties, content availability, and overall retail support for it. So because of all that, the marketplace spoke and made HD DVD fade into the sunset, while Blu-ray continued to expand its reach across the world. Now, while all this was going on, television technology continued improvements as well. Around this time came the induction of the HD TV, which provided a huge surge and boost in sales for the format for years and years to come. In subsequent years, Blu-ray continued its evolution and eventually by 2016 would provide us with its next step in physical media, 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. 4K refers to the resolution of the content itself, which is approximately 4,000 pixels wide, meaning its resolution is far higher than standard high definition of 1080p. It offered more detail, sharper images, and superior sound quality. Similar to Blu-ray as a format taking off with the induction of HD TVs, so too the same thing happened for 4K when 4K Ultra HD televisions came onto the market, supporting and complementing the 4K format ever since. In short, 4K discs with their compatible televisions offer 4 times the number of pixels than traditional 1080p HD picture and sound. Colors in film and television underwent significant enhancement and improvements, causing a striking and mesmerizing experience for the viewer at home. Gaming consoles got on board with it as well, and would go on to adopt 4K technology, which only continued to further the adoption and popularity of the format. Then, as we all know, streaming began its digital age and eventually started its own support of 4K content to be streamed to its viewers. Now, arguably to this day, 4K has become the bar for high-quality home entertainment. There are now certain manufacturers that are producing 8K televisions, but that has of yet to take any sort of significant hold with the mass marketplace and get 4K to get pushed away completely. But let me jump back to streaming for a moment. Streaming technically started and continued its growth as early as the mid-2000s, going back to the inception and growth of the internet itself. The internet's adoptance and acceptance in society as a whole was essential for streaming to be where it has arrived at today. Within the mid-2000s came an absolute milestone for streaming: YouTube. By 2007, Netflix started as a DVD rental by mail service, but eventually fully adopted and owned streaming due to the internet's improvements that were predominantly brought on by high speed and better technology that supported it. By the 2010s, new streaming services would be born, inundating the market with even more to choose from, with services like Amazon, Hulu, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Crackle, HBO Max, Disney Plus, and more, all of which would offer diverse and original content, which in turn helped to open the door for more projects and films to be made and released that beforehand may never have even seen the light of day. Eventually, live streaming further enhanced and popularized the format even further, so much so that streaming officially had global reach and dominance of people in more ways than one. Streaming up to today has completely changed the way that we access and consume film and entertainment. The impact of it all has been profound on the industry, leading studios to completely reimagine and view their distribution model and methods. It's also had quite a large effect on people's viewing habits at home, causing a lot of us right now to be on a somewhat two-sided view of the best or better way to view entertainment: streaming or physical media, or as some would say, streaming versus physical media, or as even some others would say, streaming over physical media, or possibly the other way around. And with all that, it brings us right up to our current time and place, a time where both the physical media format and streaming do coexist. Many are skeptical of that coexistence and seem to believe that one will eventually overtake and eliminate the other. As technology continues its evolution, it's important to be mindful that so too do we as a society and people that support the arts and entertainment, and how we choose to show that support. We seem to get a sense in the air that both can't coexist, or even maybe should. That notion right there, honestly, is something that frightens me, and it's for a lot of reasons. It's not because I'm afraid of change and inferior technology and/or methods getting faded into history, but it's because of what I see it doing to the big picture of the film industry, and the care and respect in which we view movies and derive meaning from them. Over this exercise in this episode, I know I'm certain to come off on being on the side of physical media. In fact, I'll just say it. I am with and stand for physical media over streaming. That's only if you're making me pick between the two. I do have my reasons for that, reasons that I will explain and explore in the coming chapters. But before I do all that, I do want to say that though I stand for physical media and always will, I'm not anti-streaming. I don't want it to go away, nor do I think that it should. It has its place and is of tremendous use for a variety of reasons that I will also do my best to explain in this episode and its coming chapters. What I ultimately want out of this whole episode is this. I want everyone to understand that physical medias for movies and shows should not just be considered just another in a long line of outdated formats in the natural cycle of technological innovation in home entertainment. If physical media were to truly disappear, I firmly believe that it would cause negative and wide-reaching impacts and effects to not just audiences, but also to the filmmakers and their teams that have poured their hearts and souls and time into sharing and preserving their stories with us all. Chapter 2. Preservation. When I view and hold physical media in my hands, namely today's Blu-ray or 4K discs, I'm constantly reminding myself that what I'm holding is not just a physical copy of a film, but also an object that preserves and protects a filmmaker's true artistic work and their vision. Most physical media in today's market is designed to withstand the test of time. Blu-rays and 4Ks in particular are made up of several durable materials that resist environmental factors such as heat, humidity, and even light, all of which can be degrading on many digital storage systems of films over some time. So, from an archival stability standpoint, physical media ensures that films will remain intact and be reliably accessible in the years to come. Aside from the quality of the discs, and equally important, their cases, give us all a tangible and accessible means for storing our favorite films. Unlike many digital formats that become obsolete due to technological changes and in some cases discontinuation of certain file formats, physical media can be played on several compatible devices for many, many years, making it much easier for future generations to access and enjoy the work of their favorite filmmakers. When I also speak of the preservation of films through physical media, another crucial aspect that comes to my mind is this idea of cultural heritage that is captured and preserved on the disc. Most any movie in one way or another is reflective of our societies and the time in which they were created in. Film fans and enthusiasts alike, I think, even people in the academia communities, can use physical media to help them further understand filmmaking and storytelling as a whole, most notably capturing and preserving the cultural norms that were present, and in some cases even polarizing at the time that the film was produced. A big one for me here is also knowing that with physical media, I get to hold and preserve a filmmaker's film in the original quality of its time, without any sort of dependence on a digital infrastructure to view or distort the films in. There is no complex system that the movie needs to be spit through in order to get back to me. I have a case, I have a disc in it, I open the case, insert the disc into my player, close it, and I'm good to go. Going back on this idea of complex digital systems being relied upon to hold and cherish our favorite movies, compatibility with digital technology is always of concern to me, especially when it comes to accessing older content. With this idea of preservation, so too does that idea apply to special editions of films that may only be produced for a limited time. This can be your collector's editions, director's cuts, unrated cuts, alternate cuts, or even the physical copy itself being made with special materials, or including providing add-ons that go beyond just your simple viewing of the film. Some collector's editions contain film cells used on the original film negative, prop replications, script notes, memorabilia, and much more. Depending on the exclusivity and uniqueness of an item, they may also rise in terms of their value and desirability across the global film community. The cases of movies. Cases of movies serve as a documentation for the history of cinema. Beautiful cover art, packaging, and any promotional materials included with physical releases all provide you with additional appreciation and worth to any film upon its release, as well as the reception that it's going to get received over time. It's actually quite hard to put into words just how valuable this aspect is alone, towards us understanding the full weight and cultural impact that movies have on all of us. Going even deeper on this, the quality of film that can be preserved through physical formats sometimes can make the case for offering supreme high-definition video and lossless audio, which provides you, the viewer, with the truest cinematic experience that you can have outside of being in a movie theater itself. Many times, I would argue that it rivals or even surpasses the quality that streaming services will be able to provide you. This should give filmmakers peace of mind knowing that at least with physical media, their vision is being tangibly preserved and undisturbed by any bad internet connections or streamers that are concerned with censoring their work. If I talk about really old movies or classic films, physical media is an excellent outlet and source to be relied upon for these movies to undergo a detailed restoration process. Detailed restoration processes, again, are detail heavy, and they focus largely on repairing and cleaning damaged or deteriorating film. And when the processes are completed, they in turn are stored and preserved on physical media, which is only going to contribute to the longevity that the film has. Preservation over time also offers viewers the opportunities to revisit or discover works of old in new and exciting ways. Commemorative anniversaries and new editions celebrate the significant milestones that movies reach, and they pay great respect to and offer a lasting legacy towards certain films. Chapter 3. Given Meaning. Something that I find concerning in the age of streaming that we live in is this idea of movies holding less meaning and impact on our pop culture and our society as a whole. Allow me to explain. Today, there are thousands of options to choose from on any given streaming service between movies and television shows. In 2023 alone, there were an estimated 43,000 movies and shows that were available to choose from between 8 streaming services alone. That's not even including all of them. Now, while a part of me thinks that this is great, that there's so much to choose from, there is another part of me that has also noticed that with so much out there on these digital libraries, movies can feel less important or significant when there seems to just literally be an endless amount of them to scroll through. Even if I choose to maybe bookmark one or two of them, it's not the same thing as setting one movie out aside from the shelf or taking the time to appreciate it directly in my hands. Chances are, even if I do bookmark one of these digital titles and I watch it and I really end up enjoying it, what am I going to do after that? I might give it a thumbs up in the system on whatever I'm watching it on, and then I'll simply kick the title to the back of the line, or in some cases just have it get lost in what I would refer to as this endless digital black hole that streaming has created. Most people, when they watch something that's really great on streaming services, they're not likely to go out of their way to literally share the title with others so that they too can appreciate it and have discussions over it. Sure, they might tag it on Instagram or some other social media channel, but in the end, due to the sheer volume of content that's out there that we are subjected to on digital platforms, it will still very likely just go in one eye and out the other as we continue this cycle of endless scrolling for more and more to get our attention instead of taking the time to slow down and look at what's right in front of us. Another scary thing that I'm seeing is movies literally going missing. I mean missing, gone, never to be seen again. Streamers deem that they didn't perform well or are getting in the way of other titles that they want you to see. This includes both original and catalog content. If it's original content, this is damaging on multiple levels. For one, it completely disregards and to me disrespects all the work that went into creating a project only to have it get swept away and totally disregarded by its viewers. You can ask most any filmmaker or even a person that is an avid movie watcher this question: how would you feel if something you made that costed loads of money, time, and personal investment was simply erased from the earth, never to be seen or heard from again because the people that bought and paid for it just felt like it? How would that feel to you? Or maybe because they were looking for a juicy tax write-off, that's why they do it. Happened this year with the Warner Brothers film Batgirl. Literally, like a $90 million film that just got completely axed because they're like, it's just not going to do great. The answer is likely no. I would not like that. I would not like that, Jordan. In fact, how about we don't do that at all? Why don't we try that instead? When it's catalog titles that this happens to, it can mean that you or history itself may eventually never know that something even existed or had something to say. It'll get lost over time because if it's not being supported on a digital platform and no companies are taking the time to invest in physical media, let alone for an older title that they see no worth in, what physical media is going to be left for the title out there is likely extremely limited and scarce, once again causing works of art to literally disappear and lose all meaning and purpose inside of the cultural eye. I have some examples of this. I'm not just making this up. Some recent examples of this include, starting with catalog titles, there was the movie Cocoon by Ron Howard in 1985. You can't find that anywhere on streaming right now, along with the rest of these titles. Dawn of the Dead, David Lynch's Wild at Heart, Dogma, that's Kevin Smith's movie. I actually have the physical media copy of that, but you can't find it anywhere to stream. Angels in the Outfield, it's a great Disney film from 1994. Nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found unless I actually own it. And this isn't just exclusive to the catalog titles. The original streamer titles have done this as well. Most notably, I remember Disney Plus did this recently with the Bryan Cranston film, The One and Only Ivan. I think he's like a zookeeper that's taking care of a monkey. I haven't seen it, and I probably should after what I'm talking about for it, but they took it away. They just took it away. You can't watch it on Disney Plus. There's no physical release for it. It's practically like it never happened. And again, when I see people pouring time and sweat and money into something to not have it be released, I question this. I don't think it's right, and I think it's a disservice to the people that you put on the project to begin with, to have them work on it, to have it be seen by nobody. At this point, I do think that I should make something clear. When I keep expressing concerns over movies or even shows getting pulled from streamers for the foreseeable future, I'm not talking about the simple matter of a movie or show that underperforms and doesn't get renewed for a second season or a sequel. This is something that happens all the time, and from a business standpoint, that makes perfect sense to me. Not enough people watched it, or it was really expensive to make, and the studios just didn't see a return on their investment. I get it. They are pulling projects entirely. That's the difference. Not to be viewed later by someone passively interested or curious. No. Removed. Gone. Permanent. That, to me, is the real concern here. Something else that I just thought of here with this. Is it just me, or does it seem that with movies and shows being available at the touch of a button with, frankly, little effort going in to get to that point, is it just me, or does it make us lose appreciation and devalue movies themselves because we are conditioning ourselves to expect instant gratification and satisfaction upon watching something and having it immediately available in our hands? If you don't like it, fuck it. Just keep on scrolling and look at something else. Never mind that the film that you totally dismissed because you were on your phone during the opening or talking throughout it didn't connect with you, so you choose to completely disregard it and pay no mind to the fact of how much work it took for people to even let alone get it made, let alone having it just get in front of you. No, doesn't matter. I find myself getting upset at that one in particular for many reasons, the biggest of which being the utter lack of respect for what's in front of you, and again, how much work it took for it to get there. I don't know how to break this to you, everybody, but getting a film made, released, and distributed, it's a true labor. It's a labor of love, don't get me wrong, but it's a labor nonetheless. When you factor distribution on top of it, not the making of the movie, I just mean simply getting it out there to the public, it becomes very costly for any film or show to be able to do this. So again, when I see people so nonchalantly, casually dismiss and disregard film after film just because they can, it just gets under my skin. Chapter 4. True Ownership. Given everything that I mentioned in the previous chapter, you should ask yourself this. Do you truly own any movies if you watch them on a streamer? I'll save you the suspense. No. No, you do not. Any streamer, at any time, can make the decision to remove titles from their library, and they don't have to ask you. They do this for a variety of reasons. Some that you could say make sense, others that do not. Regardless of the reason, at the end of the day, any time they do this means one simple fact. They own the filmmaker's work, and you do not. Let me share some common reasons that this happens. First, license expirations. Platforms like Netflix or Amazon typically pay a fee to acquire the rights of a title for a set period of time. After the period of time passes, they may choose to renew the paid-for time period or let it expire and go away. Depending on the popularity of the title, this can prove to be very costly at times. Another reason this happens, exclusivity. Sometimes movies and shows can just be pushed out to make room for a streamer's original content. Third reason this happens, viewer demand. Streamers are like any other business. They operate in large part based off what their viewership data is telling them. If they deem that certain films are showing as being underperforming or are not fitting along with the rest of their content, they can choose to simply eliminate it from their library. A good way of looking at this is picturing a streamer as the ultimate curator of a digital shelf, with them getting to choose if something belongs on it. Again, not you, them. Fourth reason for this, geographical restrictions. Certain areas of the world always have licensing restrictions that can negate or in some cases make it impossible for certain titles to be seen. The fifth and final most common reason for this is platform closure. With there being so many streamers that are competing against one another, not to mention digital movie library companies like Vudu out there, it's only natural that not all of them can and will survive. This is capitalism at its finest. When a streamer fails, all of its titles go bye-bye. If there was any original content on them, you can kiss them goodbye too, unless they happen to get picked up and saved over by another network. The scariest of all those is thinking of a place like Vudu if it were to fail. You could literally dump thousands of dollars into your digital catalog and the company could go under and all your titles would go along with it. Or maybe the company is doing so well that they get bought out by somebody else and certain titles that they bought don't get carried over in the merger. This has happened. After hearing all those reasons, I still expect that there's going to be some out there that are going to say this to me. Well, so what? I don't need to own any of it, Jordan. As long as I can watch movies and shows when I want and how I want, that's all I really care about. That mentality may be befitting for the casual viewer, and honestly, that's perfectly fine to me. It really is. I don't expect every single person out there that watches and enjoys movies to have to want and take the time to collect them for themselves. Convenience and having the amount of titles at your fingertips without having to pay for each of them individually does certainly have its merits. Even some movies I have seen over the years that I have enjoyed, I wouldn't necessarily want to actually own a physical copy of them. It doesn't make them lesser movies per se, it just means that I have a very particular preference on how I collect movies and decide upon the ones that get to stay on the shelf. That, and I really only have so much space in my life. What I choose to fill it with has to be taken seriously and with thoughtful consideration. Even so, I still think it's important that as consumers of entertainment and film, we should be clear on our understanding of what real control and ownership is over our movies. Convenience is there for sure with streaming, I can't argue against that. But in reality, you still own nothing that's contained on it. You are accessing a licensed copy of a film or show. You're not purchasing a tangible product for yourself that you get to own and keep. The right to be able to watch anything on streaming is only done so through licensing agreements between the streaming services and the owners of the films and the shows, typically being your studios or distributors. Again, not you. You may be able to email in some suggestions on titles that you'd like to see out there on the services, but as private companies, no one is obliged to listen to you. They don't care about an individual person on there, they just don't. At the end of the day, your viewership on their platform turns you into nothing but a cog in their set of data algorithms and spreadsheets that are going to be used to dictate what should stay on their network and what should go. Again, you own nothing.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. So you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
With physical media, when you purchase it, it's yours, indefinitely. There's no dependence on licensing, no dependence on internet or a company say-so over whether or not you should be able to watch this or not. You are the master of your own destiny and control of what you watch, and not the other way around. Here's another way of saying this. You are renting their content, not owning it, if you choose to only watch content through streaming. The distinctions with all of this should make you think twice about what true, real ownership means. Your long-term access to movies and shows, ability to take them with you wherever you go, and the overall permanence of a collection all comes into play with this level of thinking. Chapter 5. Supporting filmmakers that you love. What I'm going to say here may veer slightly off just the subject of physical media and go into a more broad concept of how we as consumers can best show our support to our favorite filmmakers with our wallets. One way or another, us spending our hard-earned money on watching filmmakers' movies will return dividends to them in one form or another. But as someone that really believes in being mindful and purposeful about how they spend their money and where, I want to be sure that how I spend my money on movies is the most beneficial to the people that are actually creating them and working within their industry. Filmmakers earn money from their films in a variety of ways. This is largely dependent on their distribution model and the strategy chosen to take for their release. If I'm talking strictly about physical media sales, it'll typically go like this. There can be upfront revenue provided from a portion of the total sales of copies like your Blu-rays and your 4Ks. It could be broken down to be a percentage of the retail price or as a fixed payment per unit sold. Royalties can also be thrown in there into the mix with physical media, which translates to ongoing payments that are still based on a percentage of the total sales of the film or show. Other ways that filmmakers and film entertainment companies make money: you do have digital sales and downloads of titles. Streaming is a viable way to make money through licensing fees or possibly through viewership metrics, but that's under the assumption that the streamers even being forthcoming with their actual metrics or even agreed to any sort of profit sharing model to begin with. Or possibly through subscription-based profit sharing, which, again, there is no guarantee that the streamer or distributor has agreed to any of that at all. Because of this uncertainty that I have with not knowing the likelihood of filmmakers recouping their expenses through fair and profitable streamer contracts, I'm inclined to want to show my support to filmmakers through more tangible and direct means. Let me give you some examples. The first and most obvious one of this is just going to see their movie in a theater. This is a classic profit model that ensures a significant portion of the box office or total ticket sales is going to get spread across the team that made the movie happen. That one's always my first go-to. Then, there's also merchandise! Merchandise! Merchandise!
We put the picture's name on everything! Merchandising! Merchandising! Where the real money from the movie is made.
This means buying your branded products like your toys, clothing, posters, soundtracks, scripts, etc. If it's a smaller or more independent studio, these days, you can give money to them directly through crowdfunding platforms, or donate money to any sort of film grants that are run by ethically minded boards that give them over to worthy teams to see their work become reality. I've seen this on Kickstarter, on Indiegogo, on Patreon, and a lot more. All of these ways are certainly more likely to give you and filmmakers peace of mind knowing exactly where your money is going, and that frankly, it will be more appreciated by the filmmakers having you spend your money this way instead of dumping funds in the digital realms with no way of being able to spend confidently knowing that your funds are in good and trustworthy hands. Chapter 6. Why Physical Media? Let me cut to the chase and spell out what's going to likely come off as being the simplest of chapters across this series. Why physical media? The bottom line. Why have it? Why spend the money? Why? Well, here it is. Quality. Simply put, quality. Better picture, higher contrast, and dynamic sound. Collectability. Limited editions, steelbook packaging, collector's items, and displayability within your home. There's no dependence on the internet. We don't need it. Get it out of here. No subscription costs. Beautiful. I don't want to have to pay for 20 streaming services. I pay for one movie that I want to watch once. It's a one-time purchase, no recurring fees afterward. It's a tactile experience. Physically handling something really does, again, add, I believe, to the appreciation that we have for it. Access to unavailable content. The previous chapter should have alluded to this. Streamers can take stuff down anytime they want to, but at least by me having it physically, unless I throw it into a fire, I'm more guaranteed to have it than the streamer is to release it with me. Special features. This means your featurettes, commentaries, deleted scenes, bloopers, interviews, trailers, photo galleries, script-to-scene comparisons, concept art, Easter eggs, rehearsal footage, alternate endings, and more. This next one's a biggie. Protection of material. Now, I don't just mean the physical case here. I mean the protection of the words that are within the story. I'm talking about free speech. There's no worry about any potential removal of any titles or specific scenes that somebody out there has deemed to be offensive and doesn't want you to see. There's no licensing issues with this, no platform closures, and no changes in any streaming policies. You get exactly what the filmmaker wanted you to see. Plain and simple. Another big one for some people, not admittedly myself, because at this point most of my crap out there is in the digital space. Privacy. I'm not on the grid. Not on the grid with physical media. They're not using my data to track their viewership metrics or any of that. I'm out. I'm on my own. Different cuts of the film. This is something that really got popularized a lot more from like director's cuts back in the day. Blade Runner is very famously known for having like 5-6 editions of the movie. These days, there are still different cuts and versions of a movie, but the likelihood of a streamer choosing to have all of those available is very little compared to the likelihood that it would be on physical media. So I would definitely think about that. This next one. No goddamn ads. None. Yes, I grant you, there's previews. But I like watching the previews, just like before watching the movie in the theater. But you can skip them. And sure, you can skip the ads, but there's no damn ads on physical media. Thank God for that. Last one here is the freedom to share. The freedom to simply share the movie. Yes, I could give a streaming login information over to somebody, but they're cracking down on that. They're cracking down on it every day. Physical media, unless I'm borrowing it or lending it to someone that's untrustworthy is going to go sell it for crack, chances are I'll get it back and I can give it out. It's just like lending out a book to somebody. It is more tangible and meaningful to do that than to just be like, oh, hey, you should watch this on this platform and then forget about it 2 days later. Again, physical media adds more meaning to movies. If nothing else, let this bullet point of a chapter be the bedrock to be used for defending physical media in your future conversations. Chapter 7. Why streaming? Much as I love and back physical media as I've done throughout this series, in an effort to remain objective on this subject and overall be fair to it, I can't completely be dismissive of the benefits and merits of streaming. So this chapter is going to serve as the answer to this question. Why stream? Here's the reasons that I could come up with. To start, there is a convenience factor with this. There just is. Instant access. There's no need to wait for a download or get up and have to put a physical copy into a player. Though I should say, really, how much damn work is it to just get up off your ass and put something in a player that's a couple of feet from you? I mean, yes, I realize you have to get up off the couch, but I mean, it's probably good for you. Good. Get up. Move. You don't lose it, or you don't use it, you lose it. You know what I mean. Portability. Just the simple portability of streaming. I could watch it on my phone, I could watch it on an iPad, I could watch it on a plane, I could watch it in a variety of different places. I can't talk against that. This one I have opinions about, but I could see somebody making the case for it. There's no physical storage space with these streaming titles. Now, I could see that being nice, right? You're saving up some room in your house, making room for more important stuff. Sure, that's true. But I still think you're diminishing the worth and real value of movies, and you just make them be more disposable by not having any physical, tangible ones to really preserve and hold on to. But again, trying to be fair to streaming and not just completely shit on it. Also, another benefit or another reason why people stream is that to the casual viewer, I would make the case that it's more cost effective at times than necessarily paying individual titles for every release that comes out. It's one thing I'll definitely grant you when it comes to 4K releases, especially. If it's a really nice one or it's like a collector's edition, they can be $30-$35 plus. And, you know, that's a big chunk of change to spend on one movie. I'll happily say that. I don't even shell out that kind of money for every release that comes out. I'm pretty selective about it. So there is definitely something to be said there. So it may be possibly cost effective for the casual viewer to pay a fixed monthly fee and get access to a large library of content as opposed to just paying for like $35 for one really nice looking movie. You may also make the argument as well with this that by having this access to the large library of content, it would be larger than any physical collection that you would maybe even be able to have the time to put together and curate, and let alone, you know, put the shelf space up yourself and do that. It's a possibility. Something else as well is the search algorithms, which some people would say, I don't really like all those algorithms, but I think you'd be surprised how often the casual person finds content because those algorithms are so good, and they put suggested titles in front of you because they track what you watch. Sometimes there is benefit to be had with that. Something I would compare to this would be like when I listen to Discovery playlists on Spotify. I've listened to a bunch of different playlists that have been made by algorithms on that, and I found certain bands through that I probably wouldn't have found without those algorithms. So, again, there's a case to be made there. Another thing, because it's digital, there's no concern over there being disk damage. Something that people talk about a lot is disc damage, though I would say DVD largely took the brunt of the heat for that. It's pretty damn hard to really damage a Blu-ray, and 4K discs are even harder. I mean, you can like chuck those things across the air and they will still probably be fine, though I don't recommend doing that. That's disrespectful to the movie. The last tangible benefit that I could come up with for streaming is that it does serve as an outlet for some smaller budget projects to live and get an audience. I am mindful of that, because not every really small project is going to be able to have the luxury to get released in a theater. But does that mean that their work is any less valuable than that of a theatrical filmmaker? I don't believe so, not necessarily. I think good story trumps all, but that's just me. So with all this being said, it's safe to say that streaming is not going to be going anywhere. All the reasons I just stated and more have led to its rise in popularity and demand over the years. Like most anything, I think if streaming is managed appropriately and is used for logical and sound reasons, I'm not going to have an issue with it. It's when we rely on it more than we should and lose sight of the bigger picture and fail as consumers, frankly, and advocates of movies to truly do our best in the power to make a difference for them. Chapter 8. What should we do? There's been a lot of information shared over the course of this series, and I imagine afterwards you're all going to have a lot to think about on the subject. That's good. I really want to know everything that you thought about this. Did you agree with me on any of this? What about disagree? Did I leave anything out of this? Will this make you think twice, or maybe even cause you to change the way that you choose to be a consumer in the world of arts and entertainment? I'm honestly happy with any of those outcomes and any more beyond that, because it still means a result and that I have reached you on some level with this subject and that you are now going to take it the next step. That being said, I think I would be remiss if I didn't leave you all with my final perspectives and definitive thoughts on where I think we should go from here with all of this. At the end of the day, at the end of all of this, I just want us as participating members of the film community and industry to put our money and our actions where our mouth is, and to be supportive and protective of the filmmaking industry, and to do all that we can to ensure filmmakers and their teams' collective works will get seen by the largest audience possible, and that their hard work and efforts do not get taken for granted, but rather get rewarded and cherished for all time. I believe both physical media and streaming can coexist and even thrive together. I don't believe that they should be in such direct opposition with one another. We as consumers and filmmakers and active working people in this industry should take a balanced and measured approach to how we handle all of this going forward from here. Advocation comes top of mind when I think of places of where to start for this. Talking about this. Really talking about this, and not just being quick to come to a simple conclusion on the subject. Our voice and presence on this issue counts and matters more than you might think it does. Where we choose to say something, where we choose to spend our money, and where and when we choose to take action on all of this matters and is noticed by the people out there. Even if you don't have a platform to be heard on, such as social media, perhaps a podcast like this, whatever. Use your words out there in the world. Just speak about it. Simply speak about it the next time that you're out and about. Could be when you're shopping, talking with your friends at a dinner party, or really anywhere that there's people that are going to listen to you. Each of us, I firmly believe this, each individual has the power, and with enough voices out there and momentum to carry it, I really believe that anything is possible in this life, especially with this subject and carrying its weight out there. A part of advocating for physical media is also education on the subject. In fact, I'd be thrilled if anyone that's listening to this chose to share this chapter or any of the previous chapters to inspire others and to really get other people thinking about all of this. I say often, even outside of this subject, we don't know what we don't know. There's so much information and action happening out in the world, it's impossible to know and have an opinion about every single thing in life. Especially an educated opinion, which always takes time, effort, resources, resilience, and discipline to acquire. Don't give a shit how advanced technology gets in our efforts to get there. There is no substitute for knowledge gained through time and hard work and determination. Providing direct support to the independent filmmaking community is yet another step that we can all take to preserve and fight for physical media. Use your voice to promote filmmakers' projects. Talk with them if you ever go to a film festival. Read books about them. Spend your money on them directly, and don't just give it out over to these big mega streaming corporations that you cannot be sure of if they're doing what's right with your money and fairly compensating the people that make the art that you know and love and care about. Do what you can to preserve movies. History isn't just about politics, geography, and learning lessons from the past. It's also about understanding where we are at points in our lives as a species. Films are one of the greatest ways to be able to understand that. They capture mentalities, styles, perspectives, vision, beauty, chaos, horror, complexity, imperfections, and so much more. If we are to lose physical media, we lose significant history in the filmmaking world to never be appreciated and utilized by future generations of filmmakers and audiences alike and across the world. Lastly, everyone, come together. Come together as enthusiasts and as filmmakers alike and take part in the community. Community really is everything here, especially in the industry of filmmaking. Strength in numbers will always count. By having and building communities of people that are going to cherish and support physical media, it means their merit and appreciation will never diminish and get taken for granted. Communities have unique discussions, they learn from one another, they recommend fantastic movies to each other, share and watch movies together, experiencing every bit of a filmmaker and their team's vision as much as possible. The true cinematic experience. From a film's inception, production, execution, and release would be severely lacking if physical media were to be taken out from that. I implore each of you, after listening to all of this, do what you can to be well-informed and supportive of the filmmaking industry. The industry does not achieve its longevity and power without each individual that takes part in it. Rich or poor, it really does not matter. You, as an individual, have the power to sway others and get them to see what others cannot. Physical media is a beautiful and wonderful thing. It's something that I want to see live on forever. If the format continues to improve and change shape, that's fine, and in fact, I would say that that is good. But don't let all filmmaking and entertainment go solely digital. I promise you, there will be more than one thing lost if we let that happen. Chapter 9. Final words. I can't thank each of you enough for listening to all of this, seriously. This style of an episode is new for me, and it's one that takes a lot of time and consideration for me to be able to assemble and produce it for you. I have other ideas for subjects that I can tackle using this type of a format and style, and so with that said, I want to hear back from each of you. Rate this episode on whatever it is that you're listening to this on. Get a hold of me. Comment on Instagram, message me directly there, message the Facebook group, or email me anytime. If you know me in person, just come up and talk to me. I don't care. As always, all that information is in the description of this and every episode of ScreenSpeak. Please think about everything that you have heard here and share it around. It would really truly mean so much to me and more if you were to do that. Till next time, thanks again for supporting my podcast, and keep doing what you can to support and be a part of the world of movies, art, and entertainment.